morning's meeting. We will now have the invocation, and I invite you all to remain standing after the invocation for the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Manager.
Will those who care to do so please rise and join us in the invocation. Dear God, it is with thanks and anticipation that we enter this new year, and we ask your blessings on our nation, on our state, and on our city. Also in this season, we pause in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and recognize all men and women of great vision who have pursued a dream to the advancement of a greater humanity. Bestow in us a continued determination to make a difference wherever possible, whenever possible, in our beloved community, and be instruments for peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Are there any agenda modifications, Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a couple. We have a couple of additions. Items number 5.01, which is a presentation and proclamation recognizing the 100th birthday of Kiwanis International, added by you, Mr. Mayor. Also, 5.02, presentation of proclamation recognizing January 31st, 2015 as Arbor Day, added also by the Mayor's office. We have a replacement item for item 9.02. It is an update on the Tallahassee Ethics Board's appointments. And also on 9.02, we're pulling that item from consent as requested by the Mayor's office to be a part of the full discussion of all of the Ethics Board appointments. And those are all of the mods that I have.
Okay, great. We'll have presentations, but I just want to remind anyone who is here to serve as a speaker. There are forms, I believe, in the back of the room, and once those are completed, will be brought over here to the Treasurer Clerk's desk, Mr. Cook. We're on for presentations, and I hadn't shared this, I don't think, with the full commission yet, but we're going to attempt these a little bit differently than we have in previous years, and frankly, I was inspired to make this change after my colleague, Commissioner Ziffer, served as the chairman during one meeting. One of my big frustrations sitting up there was, one, the volume of how many of these we did, but often commissioners would suggest proclamations, but the mayor would read them. And so we're going to try out a new practice going forward, and I will take some proclamations, but my colleagues will also come down to present various proclamations for proclamations that they may sponsor or that they have taken a particular interest in a particular issue area. We invite them to sponsor and read the proclamation. So this evening we've got two proclamations, 5.01, and I'd like to invite Commissioner Gil Ziffer to please approach the podium to present the first presentation to the Kiwanis Club. Commissioner Ziffer.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. What the mayor didn't mention is he gave me advance warning. When I did this, I didn't give any of my colleagues warnings, and I think they were taken by surprise, and it's one of those situations where you're given something which you probably needed to prepare a little bit for, but not in this case, so I appreciate Mayor for giving me the heads up. I would like to now ask Steve Sullivan, Lieutenant Governor of Division 3 encompassing Tallahassee and Leon County, as well as any other Kiwanis representatives, to please come up and join me at the podium. You guys look like you're walking in lockstep. Everybody's doing the same thing. A pleasure. Come on up. Come on. You surround me. Just like a warm blanket.
There you go.
Right?
We'll get up here. We'll get close.
Okay. Today we recognize the 100th birthday, 100, of Kiwanis International and the tireless work of local clubs. Hey, Jim. Good to see you. Which have contributed to our community over the years. So I'm going to present it in a second. If they didn't change the ribbon on me, you're going to take this home. Whereas Kiwanis International was founded and incorporated in Detroit, Michigan on January 21st, 1915, and has 232,976 adults in 8,300 adult clubs and 349,296 youth and 7,900 youth clubs in more than 80 countries around the world. And whereas following their motto, serving the children of the world, each year Kiwanis Club sponsors 150,000 service projects, raises $100 million, and devotes more than 6 million hours sponsoring and supporting youth school organizations. K-Kids in elementary school, Builders Clubs in middle school, Key Clubs in high school, Circle K Clubs in college, and the Action Club of Tallahassee for people with disabilities. And whereas Kiwanis Club's efforts include the support of projects at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, the purchase and support of the Ralph Davis Scholarship House for the Southern Scholarship Foundation, major funding and continuing support of the Miracle Sports Field and sports program at Metzer Field, accessible ramp builds, improvement to public parks, immunization drives and diaper collection, financial and volunteer support to local charities, festivals and activities, college scholarships, and innumerable other services, which I can't imagine what's left because it's an incredible number of things that you all do. Whereas Kiwanis Clubs raised more than $100 million in the United States Children's Fund, UNICEF, and the Worldwide Service Project for Iodine Deficiency Disorders, the world's leading preventable cause of mental retardation, and raised more than $110 million for the Eliminate Project that targets maternal neonatal tetanus. And whereas the Kiwanis Clubs in Leon County are Kiwanis Club of Tallahassee, which was established in April of 1923, Kiwanis Club of Capital City, Tallahassee, which was established in August of 1959, right around my birth year, Kiwanis Club of Tallahassee Northside, now therefore, or him, I do hereby recognize January 21st, 2015 be designated as Kiwanis International Day. Thank you and congratulations. If you'd like to say a few words, please do so.
Absolutely. That's okay. Thank you so much for giving us this proclamation and honoring Kiwanis today. As he has so eloquently put it, it's all about kids. And that's what we do. It's all about kids in Tallahassee, supporting kids and making it a better place for them to live and play in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, while they're being seated, could I make a couple of remarks? Despite the fact that I'm a Rotarian, my youngest daughter is a K Club member. My oldest daughter is in Key Club and told me just yesterday she wants to become national president of Key Club.
Well done.
But more important than that, I'm on the board of the Florida Disabled Outdoors Association. And Kiwanis was very instrumental in providing the funding for Miracle League, which provides recreational activities that's out near the skate park, near Messer Field. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I would encourage you to go out and be a part of that. And it provides recreational activities for children and adults with disabilities. And let me tell you, to see the looks on those children's faces when they're able to be out there playing softball and baseball and running the bases, it just makes all the difference in the world. And Kiwanis played a major role in that, and they continue to even volunteer with the programs that FDOA provides at Miracle League. So I just want to congratulate them on 100 years, and we look forward to 100 more of community service by Kiwanis International.
Great. Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Again, happy centennial.
Mr. Mayor, before they leave, if I could just briefly, I wanted to echo those remarks to the Kiwanis, and I also, before he leaves the room, Under Sheriff Mike Wood has done such an outstanding job in a time of crisis for this community. And the last part of that was the loss of my dear friend and yours, Sheriff Larry Campbell. I know there's been an awful lot of weight on your shoulders, and you have answered the call for Leon County, and I just want to say thank you, sir.
Thank you. I now want to bring to the podium Commissioner Nancy Miller, who will present a proclamation in honor of Arbor Day. Commissioner Miller.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to bring up Miss Ann Bidlingmeyer to join me at the podium. And if, for those of you who may not know Ann, she has been committed to the preservation of trees in this community at such a high-profile level over the last, 30 or 40 years that she has earned the nickname of Joan of Bark. I thought that was something I wanted to share with all of you. Arbor Day is a holiday that is very important to the city of Tallahassee. We take pride in our canopy roads, our vibrant parks, our neighborhoods, and local businesses that are adorned with majestic trees. So it is only fitting that we recognize this day that encourages our citizens to plant and care for trees throughout our community. As a commissioner of the city of Tallahassee, I would like to present this proclamation in support of Arbor Day and ask that all City of Tallahassee celebrates Arbor Day on January 31st. This is a national holiday, and it means very much to this community. I know all of us would really, we know that folks really get upset when a tree comes down in this town. So this is the day to get out there and plant more to replace the ones we've lost over the years. So the proclamation reads, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, whereas trees can cut energy use for heating and cooling, help clean the air, reduce stormwater runoff, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas the trees in our community increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of businesses, and beautify our community, whereas trees have always been an important part of our community's excellent quality of life, adding joy and spiritual comfort to generations of residents and visitors alike. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Miller, on behalf of our commission and Andrew Gillum, the mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby proclaim Saturday, January 31st, 2015 as Arbor Day in the city of Tallahassee, and urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to help continue this long-lasting relationship between trees and our community. I further encourage Tallahassee residents to support efforts to protect our existing trees so that we may all enjoy the many benefits of the majestic, mature trees in the future. This is our flyer. I wanted to hold this up. You'll see this around town just to remind everybody that January 31st is a day to get out there, plant some trees, take care of the trees in your yard.
Thank you very much. This is a project that has gone from purely volunteer citizen effort to remarkable support from the City of Tallahassee and Parks and Recreation and Leon County as well. We normally get the plantings done by 11 o'clock. We start at 9, and we have very rarely gone over 2 hours. So you're not going to kill yourself by coming out and planting some. But there are flyers in the back, on the back table, and out in the mezzanine. So, and it's really a lot of fun. So I hope that as many of you as possible can come on out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, you know, when you plant a tree, you get to watch it grow year after year, just like your children. You get to see it get bigger and bigger, and that just brings a lot of continuity and joy to a person's soul. So on behalf of the planting of the trees, I just wanted to share that thought with you.
The planting of the tree.
Mr. Mayor, while you return, if I could just take a second, I want to recognize we've got a couple of scouts in our audience today that are here to get their merit badges. I know one of them is Chandler Gortney, and I just wanted to point them out. If you young folks would like to stand up so everybody can see you, so you can, we know that you're here to learn a little bit more about government and how we operate. Thank you for coming. Chandler, why don't you wave so we know which one is Chandler? Good wave. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Might I also, I didn't want this moment to pass without also recognizing the significance of what Ann Bidlingmeyer has done in this community over the years. Ann was a teacher at Lincoln High School when I served on the school board, and so I've known her for many of those years of activism in this community. And I can tell you there would be a lot more paved parking lots and roads and trees cut down if it were not for the efforts of Ann and the leadership that she has shown in that respect. So, Ann, thank you for your continued service to this community in that respect.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, Chandler. But I also want to introduce the rest of your friends. This is Troop 51, and they're here this evening to receive their citizenship merit badge. Is that correct? That means y'all got to stay the whole meeting. You got to participate, say yay to what you like and no to what you don't like. Actually, don't do that. That would be a bad idea. But we want to welcome you to the Tallahassee City Commission. We're now at the point of the meeting where we take public input on agended items. We do have a section of the meeting where we take public input on unagended items, but this is the portion where we'll take input on agended items. Mr. Cook.
Mr. Mayor, we do have several speakers. The first speaker tonight will be Curtis Baines, speaking on item 907, which is approval of a Homeland Security grant, and 1304, which is on the policy portion, the amended hiring practice, ban the box. And I'll ask speakers to give their name and address for the record, and then they'll have 3 minutes for their remarks with a light to the left of their microphone to guide them.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Curtis Baines, 1323 East Tennessee Street. Happy New Year. Glad to be back to speak to you about some issues that are of pressing public concern to all of us. This evening there are two. I'll try to get them all in within the 3 minutes allotted in this particular section. The first is 9.07, which is the acceptance of the Homeland Security grant for the police analyst. For several years now, I have raised objections to continuing the participation with the Department of Homeland Security with these analysts, these Homeland Security analysts. Last year, I think it was, the year before last, I gave you a Senate report that talked about how ineffective and unuseful these fusion centers are, and that's what they're involved with, is the fusion centers that collect information about the public and disseminate it to law enforcement for the purpose of terror prevention. There has been nothing anywhere to indicate that this has done anything to prevent terrorism, and the Senate report even supports that. The law enforcement community has two other systems, information systems, that are specifically designed for crime information. They have the National Crime Information Center and the Florida Crime Information Center. They're specifically designed for the purpose of law enforcement. We don't need to be involved with the Department of Homeland Security in any of their efforts to try and subvert the civil rights of our citizens. Which brings me then to the other item that I want to speak about, and that's the ban the box. I don't see anything attached to the agenda, so I'm not exactly sure what your policy is. There's no board policy attached to it to describe what you're trying to do. I don't know if this is just a discussion that you're intending to have to try and provide more feedback to staff in designing what's going to be involved here, but there are a number of questions that come to my mind when we're talking about this. First, and this is more a statement than a question, once people have served their time to the state for whatever crime it is that they've committed, there are certain rights that accrue or should accrue back to them: the right to vote, the right to seek public employment. But until that time, I don't think it's very useful for you to say that you're going to ban the box, when in fact you cannot give or you probably shouldn't give a conditional employment agreement or offer to someone with embezzlement in their past, for the treasurer. I mean, you're going to look at that. You may as well know that up front. And there's nothing wrong with asking about that, I don't think. But it raises questions in my mind.
Excuse me, your 3 minutes have expired.
Thank you very much. About how you're going to implement it, because there's nothing in there that talks about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker is Gregory James. He'll be followed by Anthony Dixon. The next 2 or 3 speakers, I believe, are all also on item 1304.
I want to say Happy New Year, Mayor, City Manager, and staff. Listen, we're here to look at item 13.4.
Could I get you to give your name and address, please?
My name is Gregory James. Address is 1134 Abraham Street.
Thank you.
And I'm the pastor of the Life Church International, an ex-offender, and I'm an ambassador for redemption. And when we look at our nation and when we look at our community, it is stated that over 1.5 million in the state of Florida are returning back into society. 1 out of every 3 households has some kind of criminal record. And today, to hear about the policy of banning the box, I want to say that in regard to that, we, first of all, don't ask the question, are we denying citizens the opportunity for employment after they paid their time in prison, jail? Then they should have access. And with having access, we're saying ban the box, but don't ban us. By supporting this initiative, it's allowing ex-felons to re-enter back into the workforce. It starts taking on the shape of sending our community in the right direction. The initiative increases the tax base. It spurs the community and the economic development. And there are certain jobs that, based on your violations, you would not qualify for. But then there are jobs that we are qualified for. So give access to that. We're not saying don't ask the question, but ask the question after you have had the opportunity to meet an individual. Because most folk get a conviction through a plea deal, never enter prisons, but got great skills, got great education background. So as we move into 2015, under the mayor's direction and under this new administration, if we're going to become an all-American city and we're going to set a standard, then let's allow all Americans that are returning back access to employment. I'm going to save some of my time for my dear friend, Attorney Chuck Hobbs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Had Anthony Dixon as our next speaker, and then he'll be followed by Mr. Hobbs.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I'll make this quite brief. The same things that speakers just spoke about, I am what we call living proof. I am an ex-con, but I am also Dr. Anthony Dixon. And I shudder to think where I would be if someone didn't give me that one chance. And so I say to you, when you ban the box, you actually are opening up that one chance for someone. And so some of us do, and some of us, as I look around this room, have heard of me and know my story, and some on the commission. But I want you to know there are thousands of us out there who made the mistakes 20 and 30 years ago, and we still pay for those mistakes. And so as I look around the room and I see I'm about the average age and with elders, no one can say that they didn't make those mistakes. And so how long do we actually pay for those mistakes? We ask. Because here I am, 20-something years removed, and even though we may have this process, I still don't have my rights back. And I was just told that I have to wait another year. I did this in my 20s. I'm in my 40s with a PhD and 3 published books, and I'm still waiting. Everyone needs that chance because we all know that we've all made mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next speaker is Chuck Hobbs, and then that's the last speaker I have on this particular item. The next speaker would be Rick Miner.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I don't want to reiterate many of the points that Pastor James has already made, as well as Dr. Dixon this afternoon. But again, I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm also a former prosecutor, work for Mr. Meggs. And often, one of the frustrations that I have within my practice is the majority of the individuals who I represent are African Americans. I do represent people of other races, but the majority are African Americans. And the primary concern that I have often that makes my existence somewhat miserable is that I feel like the Greek mythological figure Sisyphus, doomed to roll that boulder up the hill for all eternity when it comes to the issue of recidivism. And obviously many of you are learned people, you know that's just a fancy word for folks who've been in trouble before and they get back into trouble. And I have surmised after 15 years of practice that the number one issue with respect to recidivism is lack of access to employment. If you tell someone that they're on probation or to keep yourself out of jail or prison, you need to work, so many of these young men and women want to work, but they just don't have an opportunity to because, again, if they go and mark on an application that they have been convicted of a felony, be it for city employment or other employment, they generally recognize that they're going to get dissed. And that's something that's of great concern to me because, again, I don't think the majority of the people want to keep going back and forth to Under Sheriff Wood's jail out there or to the prison, but I think they wind up going there again because they don't have access to employment. So if there's something that the city can do to ameliorate that with respect to city employment, I'm all for that, and I hope that, and I pray that each of you will continue to exercise the wisdom that you have on many other issues and give this great consideration, and again, hopefully we can get that box banned here in Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just before we go to the next speaker, well, thank the speakers for coming forward. And I just had to comment on my brother Chuck, who calls himself Old Hobbs. And he knows about being Sisyphus because he's a Gator fan. But I wanted to publicly thank him because in the face of the city of Tallahassee and Florida State University being under attack by ESPN and many people on national TV, Chuck Hobbs, as a Gator fan, has been a consistent voice on social media defending our city. I want to say thank you, sir.
And before we go on, I know we're going on to the next speaker. You all, I know my position on this issue, but you really did pierce, I think, my thinking, and I saw nodding heads of some of my colleagues with your own personal testimonies and personal stories. And I know that there are tens of thousands, unfortunately, out there who share that experience. So I want to thank you for coming out here and being self-sacrificial and sharing what those experiences have been.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. The next speaker is Rick Miner. He's speaking on item 1308, funding for the new Access to America's First Christmas site.
Hello, Rick Miner, 407 Vintage Ride. Mayor Gillum, Commissioners, Madam Manager, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As the Treasurer Clerk noted, I'm here to speak in favor of 1308, which is the America's First Christmas site, public access. As you know, in 1539, nearly 500 years ago, Hernando de Soto had an encampment at that site, and during that time, his priests observed the very first Christmas, according to scholars, in the Americas. Just as importantly, however, that site was the settlement of an important Appalachian capital for nearly 1,000 years. As such, that is a tremendously valuable historical, cultural, and educational landmark here in Tallahassee that can attract a large number of tourists to this area in the coming years. For the past 2 years, the Commission has approved the original plan for this as a legislative priority. But in my opinion, this agenda item is a vast improvement over the original plan because it doesn't require the purchase of land to extend Goodbody Lane to make public access to the site, and therefore it saves quite a bit of taxpayer dollars. I just want to go ahead and express my support for this as a citizen. I want to commend Wayne Tedder and his team for bringing this agenda item forward, and I hope you'll support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Rick Minor, because we wouldn't be here having this conversation if it wasn't for all the groundwork that he laid over the last 4 years, and also our past mayor, Mayor Marks, because of the work that you did in picking this up, carrying it to the legislature, getting legislative support, and as a result, this is, and Burt Pope, I would like to give him a shout out too. Without the work that you all have done, it really, this would have been just a neglected park the way it has been always, and yet it has a tremendous potential. So thank you, and thank you for speaking on behalf tonight.
Perfect.
So, Mr. Mayor, that's the last speaker we have on agenda items. We do have several speakers on unagenda items. We'll take those at the latter part of the meeting when that's scheduled.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, we are on consent, and I do know 9.02 has been moved. Second. Was 9.07 also?
No, that was put back on.
It was put back on. So there's a motion by Commissioner Zifford to approve, and there's a second by Commissioner Maddox. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. Now we are on to introduction of ordinances. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 ordinances for introduction tonight. All 3 ordinances will be set for public hearings on January 28th meeting of this commission at 6 o'clock p.m. Item number 1201 is introduction of ordinance 15-Z-01. Is proposed amendment to the official zoning map to change the zoning classification from residential preservation zoning district to the Kings Mill Plan Unit Development Zoning District. The specific title of the ordinance 15-Z-01 is the ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designating and including additional territory as and in PUD Plan Unit Development on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission. Again, the public hearing is set for this on January 28th. It will deem it introduced. The next item, introduction, is 12.02 in your materials. It's introduction of ordinance 15-Z-03, proposed amendment to the official zoning map to change the zoning classification from residential preservation 1 zoning district to the Shabbat at FSU Plan Unit Development Zoning District. Again, the public hearing on this item is set for January 28th of this month at 6 p.m. The official title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designated including additional territory as and in Plan Unit Development on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission.
Show all 3. That's second. I'm sorry.
The third introduction is items 12.03. It's the introduction of ordinance number 15-006, revising the city sign code relating to off-site advertising on Star Metro infrastructure. The first and only public hearing on this item is also on January 28th at 6 p.m. The specific title of the ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending the Tallahassee Land Development Code relating to the sign code, providing for signage on all transit infrastructure, providing for a Star Metro advertising policy, and prohibiting signage on transit infrastructure in certain areas of the city. And again, the public hearing on this item is at 6 p.m. on January 28th.
Great. Please show all 3 ordinances as introduced. We're on the policy formation and direction side. And Commissioners, if there's no objection.
I'm confused. Don't we need to go back to the item pulled from consent?
It is later on the agenda,
later?
on 13.04. It's on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. If there's no objection, we're going to move 13.03 due to scheduling issue up. So we'll take that item. Madam Manager, if you want to introduce 13.03.
13.03 is an update on the Word of South Festival. And Commissioners, the inaugural Word of South Literature and Music Festival will be held April 11th and 12th, 2015 at Cascades Park. The festival's founder, former City Commissioner Mark Mushton, is here, along with Ashley Edwards, who is our Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Affairs Director, to provide you with an update on this event. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Madam Manager, it's my pleasure to be a part of this presentation. And my part to add here is simply that we are so excited about this event. It's been a real pleasure working with former Commissioner Mushton and his team, and I have no doubt that this is going to become a signature event for the community, and we're very proud to be a part of that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over and let him tell you all the exciting things they have planned.
Welcome home, Commissioner.
Well, thanks.
You left here pretty quickly.
I'm sitting there in the audience going, it's kind of nice being on the other side. I can, look at my phone without guilt during the proclamations and things like that. And I'm also, I get to call on Michelle Bono to come help me.
Yeah.
We're really excited about this. I always felt like I worked pretty hard as a commissioner. I've worked way harder on this than I ever worked as a commissioner. I mean, this has been a lot of work, but I think it's going to be a pretty neat thing. And we're doing, for those of you who don't know, a festival of books and music. And if you Google that, you don't come up with a whole lot. It's sort of a unique thing. And so we have musicians who have written books, authors who have written about music, and a bunch in between. So I'm going to see if I can do this here. There we go. And these are just some of the artists that are here. Some of these folks are local. Some of these are national. The Doghouse Band is a group of very famous writers who play music, who we're very fortunate to have. Tony Hale is the actor who's from Tallahassee, who's written a children's book, who's supposed to be here. We have a whole big bunch of children's activities that we're hoping to we'll get a lot of folks out for. So I'm going to mention just a few other things about this. I know what you'd really like is a long and involved presentation and a PowerPoint, but I don't have that. It's April 11th and 12th, Saturday and Sunday at Cascades Park. The Friday night before is a concert with the Avett Brothers that we've teamed up with the county and the Tourist Development Council and Scott Carswell and all guys to do that. The Sunday night of the festival is the Tallahassee Symphony. It has an event that's a ticketed event. Other than the Friday night event and the Sunday night event, at this point, everything's for free. Now, we have, some really national, the gospel group Sweet Honey and the Rock is appearing with the FAMU Choir. That should be really great. The Marcus Roberts Trio is going to be here Sunday morning. We're trying to set up a champagne brunch as part of that with local food offering. So we really, the kind of the thinking on this, we could start small and try and build this up over 10 years, or we could try and start big and keep it going. And so we've opted for the latter, and I think it's going to be really good. I want to thank you guys for your support. Want to particularly thank you. You don't need me to tell you that Ashley Edwards is a rock star, and we could not have had more cooperation and help from Tallahassee Parks. I mean, there's a reason that Parks and Rec were #1 in the nation, and so this is another feather I think in our cap to try and really put ourselves more on the map than we even are. My father was administrator at Tallahassee Memorial when they started the Golden Gala. I remember that. I was there at the first one. I remember people thinking, well, I don't know if this is really going to work out or not. It has. I remember the first Winter Festival. Remember this? Steve Weisberg put money out of his own pocket to make it happen. It was like fire trucks with tinsel on them, and now it's come a long way. So this is sort of our chance. I mean, this could be our South by Southwest. It's not just me. I mean, there's a whole big pile of volunteers working on this. So again, I thank you very much for your support. Happy to answer any questions. I want each of you to introduce one of these acts on April 11th and 12th. So hope you guys will come out there and do that. And thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. And you worked pretty hard while you were here, so I can only imagine what it's like on the other side. But, you know, great cities do great things like this. And so we appreciate your willingness to put some time and dedication and volunteerism and helping to organize the culture, arts, and heritage community in this city, as well as the tourism faction, to attract an event, a venue like this. I think you guys have gone big, and I have every hope it's going to be an amazing success. I look forward to being there. Absolutely. Any questions, Commissioners? If not, thank you, Ashley, also for the update. Next agenda item. We're going to go back to the top 13.01. This is a discussion on the collective bargaining agreement with fire. And is that manager or the attorney? Okay.
It's me first. Commissioners, as you know, over the last year, we've been negotiating with the International Association of Firefighters for renewal of the contract that expired on September 30th, 2014. I'm very pleased to report to you that within the parameters set forth by the mayor and the commission through the negotiation process, the City of Tallahassee and the Tallahassee IAFF Professional Firefighters Local 2339 have reached agreement on the terms of the firefighter and the supervisor bargaining contracts for fiscal year 15 through fiscal year 17. The IAFF membership overwhelmingly ratified the terms of both contracts late last week with a 171-1 vote. The agenda item presented this evening for your consideration includes the details of the terms of the contracts and is recommending your approval of the terms. Raul Lavin is here and Ellen Blair is here to answer any questions that you might have on the contracts.
Thank you, Manager. Any questions, Commissioners? There's a motion to approve.
Second.
And it's been properly seconded. Before we take the vote, I just want to extend our appreciation to Chief and your management team, to Ellen and Raul, the city manager, the attorneys who worked to bring this in for a landing, and obviously to the men and women of the rank and file and leadership of the fire department for the resolute job that they do every day, keeping our community safe as supreme first responders, but also for working with this commission to bring this agreement in for a landing. I think it's a solid agreement, and happy we could reach a conclusion. If there are no other questions or comments, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner.
Could I ask, and you tell me if it's appropriate at this point or not, I was curious to know where we are in our negotiations with the PBA and when we can expect that to come back to us.
We had our first well, let me ask Ellen to come up and tell you. We had our first mediation session last week, or second one.
Good afternoon, Ellen Blair, Human Resources Manager. In response to your question, we're actually on mediation number 3, I believe, and we have made progress in those areas, and we continue to be hopeful that we can bring you a resolved contract very soon. We'll see.
Can I make just a request? Because I know we have another meeting in 2 weeks. Perhaps we could, since when it comes to contract negotiations, clearly in an executive session, it enables us to discuss some things. We could have an executive session perhaps before the next commission meeting, and we can have further discussion on this. I think it'd be helpful to all of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there someone who is not going to be here for the 28th? Okay.
What's the date?
The 28th.
I was thinking someone mentioned to me that they might not be
I'm going to be the meeting on the 11th of February.
Maybe that's it.
National League of Cities.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So we'll have something, we'll try to get a session scheduled between now and the next meeting. Thank you, Commissioners. We're now on to 13.02, approval of resolution changing the airport name. Chris Curry, Aviation Director, but before that, Commissioner Maddox, you want to make any, or Manager, any
let me introduce it just with a few comments, and I know that Commissioner Maddox will want to say some things as well. You all will recall that you actually gave the direction not too long ago for us to make the transition from a regional airport to an international airport. And there's a process that you approved that is part of that whole thing. This is one of the first steps in the process, actually, to start the name change. And there's a cycle associated with it that if we get into the cycle now, we can have an approved name change by April, basically.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Madam Manager. Okay. This does not mean we can all run to the airport and catch flights to Paris.
No, it doesn't.
If you are contemplating, anyone in the sound of my voice, of sending in a zing to their local paper to say we're not international because we can't catch a flight to London, please be dissuaded from doing so. We are doing this for two reasons that come to mind immediately. General aviation. Today, if a private plane is leaving Costa Rica or Jamaica or what will soon be Cuba or any area outside the United States that is close enough for a private plane to reach us, and they're entering the state of Florida, they cannot land in the city of Tallahassee. They must first land in a place that is an international airport where they can clear customs. We, of course, want them to land in the city of Tallahassee for no other reason than we sell them fuel. The more fuel we sell, the more money goes into our airport, the more dollars we have to spend to ensure that our landing fees are low, that we can attract more airlines, so perhaps one day we can have international flights to Paris. So general aviation is the first one. The second one is cargo. The city of Tallahassee and our airport already leads the panhandle with the most cargo. We fly in and out 9.5 million pounds of cargo a year from Tallahassee Airport. FedEx has just started building FedEx Ground in Summit East, and by having an international designation, it will allow cargo that comes from outside of our country to land directly in Tallahassee. That's important because we'll sell them fuel, and we'll have landing fees, which will help us all get flights to Paris and London. That's my introduction. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Curry.
You notice he didn't even get up to come up here because he figured that Commissioner Maddox was going to say everything that needed to be said.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, appointed officials. Chris Curry, Director of Aviation.
Oh, questions.
So
I'm going to do this. I'm going to move the item.
Second, and how many international designations are there in the state of Florida out of the airports?
Well, there's more than 20 airports that are commercial airports in Florida. I would say there's about 18 of those more than 20 that have an international designation, and Tallahassee is one of those that don't, along with Gainesville, Florida, and I believe Northwest Florida Regional Airport.
What about, I'm just curious, the Panama City Beach Airport, does it have international designation?
Panama City Beach Airport is named an international airport.
The other, I want to add to Commissioner Maddox's comments, and that is that we have a great deal of effort from an economic development standpoint to further develop technology that's coming out of Florida State University. And we would like, if there are certain opportunities that come out of that where manufacturing could occur here as a result of that, and we have international partners, it's going to make it all that much more difficult for them to want to do that here because they won't be able to clear customs here. The other thing is we have a tremendous amount of open airspace, which you may want to comment on as compared to other airports around the state. So it would be easier for somebody to clear customs in Tallahassee, Florida than probably an awful lot of other airports because it's a lot easier to land here. So this is not, as I'll repeat what Commissioner Maddox said, about flying individually international. This has to do with us being available for people to do cargo, for people to clear customs, and eventually, as Commissioner Maddox said, have flights, but not anytime soon.
That's correct. Our airspace is not as congested as a lot of airspace around airports. And the other piece of it is that we have those 1,000 acres of land that we want to develop. So to me, by changing the designation to international, we become part of that planning process for a business that may be looking to relocate from an international destination to a place within Florida. And my fear is that as soon as we get out there and we change this name, someone that's looking up Tallahassee, whether it's by Google or some other website, if we don't show that we're headed towards that international potential, then we lose the competitive advantage compared to other airports that have that designation.
Mayor.
Great. Commissioner Miller?
Well, I wanted to add also that this doesn't just affect Tallahassee. This affects everyone around us. I was approached by the mayor of Thomasville about 6 months ago who said, you know, that's so critically important. They had recently applied for a grant that was a significant grant that was economic development. I'm sorry, I misspoke. They were attracting an industry that was looking to relocate, and they were, by all measures, just the right place, except for that one thing. They had to have an international airport within 45 minutes travel, or 45 miles. I'm sorry, this was a long time ago, but the gist of it is this decision affects a lot of this entire Big Bend region, and it's going to open up opportunities for people in Georgia and in east and west of us. And so I think it's very exciting that we're moving in this direction.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Commissioner Miller's comments, when I was briefed by, can I call you Chris? Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. When I was briefed by Chris on the plans for the airport, I immediately got excited because I've been around this community when Scott was our previous first ceremonial mayor, and the efforts that he put into bringing air service to our community, and that's continued over the years. I became extremely excited, and I know what we've proposed to spend on the airport through the sales tax extension, and so there are just so many opportunities now, and we've got a visionary on board now who's willing to make that happen. Chris and I also talked about, Commissioner Miller, what we need to do in terms of engaging the region. And he's been to Monticello. I've invited him to speak at our Quincy Rotary Club, I think next week, if I'm not mistaken, because it's going to be important for our neighbors when they decide if they're going to travel, particularly by air, to want to choose Tallahassee rather than going to Valdosta or Panama City. And so we've got to engage them in a positive manner in that respect. And Chris has been very open to that. And so I want to commend, first of all, the city manager for bringing a person of Chris's caliber here to Tallahassee to help us move our airport forward and working with Commissioner Maddox to help make that happen. And I just hope that you continue to have the leeway and latitude that you need to engage the aviation industry and others to continue to move our airport forward and to develop that plan that you've got for making us truly an international airport. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and obviously thank you, Commissioner Maddox, again for so doggedly holding on to this. We got the AirTran piece before under your mayorship and international designation as a commissioner, and I think that hopefully, as my colleagues have indicated, this will hopefully begin the domino effects to all those other customer as well as business uses that we all want to see happen at the airport. Commissioner Miller, and then we'll take the vote.
Well, I also want to thank Commissioner Maddox and you, Mr. Curry, for Silver Airways.
That's right.
I mean, that is also something that you had a significant, well, you all made it happen, so that's great. What you're doing is just wonderful.
Great. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Curry.
Thank you.
Item 13.04.
13.04 is what we talked about earlier, amending the hiring practice, ban the box. And commissioners, late last year, Mayor Gillum, who was then Commissioner Gillum, asked me to research the pros and cons of implementing a ban the box policy for the city of Tallahassee. This initiative has gained interest in various large cities across the country and also here in Florida as a way to ensure that individuals with criminal records are assured the ability to compete for city jobs. Ban the box, in our case, will mean removing the question on the job application related to criminal history. If a person is selected for interview and later offered a position, the offer will be conditional until criminal background is checked. So again, I think that was a question that Mr. Baines raised earlier. Ellen Blair is here to give you some details, and I'm sure Mayor Gillum has some comments as well.
Sure. Well, I also want to acknowledge Mayor Marks, who also raised this issue prior to him leaving office. A lot of things to be said, but I do think that one of the main points is for folks who think that we no longer will consider criminal background in our considerations is simply not the case. It still is considered. This is simply a changing of the sequence of when that question will be asked. And, quite simply, and I run into it every week. We heard some testimony of it tonight, but someone comes up and they say, you got a job, that you know of that you can refer me to. I'm having the hardest time trying to land something everywhere I go, regardless of my skills, regardless of my qualifications. When I let them know that I've had, a criminal history, it seems to take me out of the process. And that happens to people repeatedly, whether or not their criminal background history is a disqualifier for the job or not. It almost always becomes, in many cases, a disqualifier. I had a young person who had a felony record, and I actually had to go to the city manager and get him waived into my office as an intern, as a commissioner. And he came wanting to volunteer with me for a year because he needed to build up enough of a resume with somebody with a name or with a reputation so that I would later vouch for him to then apply for a job at somewhere in this community. And he did it, and he worked dutifully, and I tried everything I could to find him placement. But the real compelling reason for me is that we all know what the recidivism rates are. We all know that, certainly in my opinion, when people have paid their debt to society, the society tells them that we want them to become community members and contributing members and responsible folks. But then there are these barriers that do pop up that prevent people from being able to make, I think, the best choices for themselves and for their families. And so this allows, I think, the interviewing folks, the hiring authorities to engage in more of a conversation. If I indicate that I have had a criminal background check, I can say, you know what, Ellen, I had 10 years ago I made a mistake, and I've learned from that, and I've got a family, and I've got a reason to live, and I've got to provide a roof over the head and food on the table for my family. That's a different relationship than me checking a box and you making assumptions about what my lifestyle choices have been. And so I'm appreciative of the manager's willingness and openness to look at this as a shift in our own city policy. And I've also been on the phone with private sector business folks trying to get them to also look at what this might mean for their businesses. Now, there are people who this won't be right for. There are employers with certain jobs where they're sensitive and it just won't work. But there are overwhelmingly jobs out there that can be made available to folks if we were to relax some of these barriers on the front end. Still ask the questions, still do the background checks, still be clear about what you're getting at the time that you bring someone on board. But obviously taking out of the question folks being, frankly, trash canned before they have an opportunity to fairly compete. Those were very persuasive comments on my behalf. I want you to make comments that are to the facts, Ellen. I didn't mean to steal much of your conversation.
Presentation's done. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, and Madam Manager. Ellen Blair, Human Resources Manager again. What you're seeing on the screen, just to give you a somewhat of a visual as to where the City of Tallahassee policies are stacking up against other policies throughout the country. What's depicted in red on this chart are states where municipalities and counties have adopted the ban the box policy, so to speak. So that gives you a sense of It's not just the city of Tallahassee. Counties and municipalities are doing it throughout the country. And in Florida, there's several large communities doing it as well. So that sort of gives you a history in terms of where the country is at in adopting policies such as this. For the city of Tallahassee, ban the box is simply a question. Right now, we currently on our application ask about felony and first-degree misdemeanor convictions. What a policy change in this area would mean is we would not be asking those questions up front. It simply ensures that the hiring managers are looking at individual applications and making their decisions as they do now based on their training and experience. And it avoids any perception that someone may have that there's a bias against an individual who checks yes on the box. Please be assured that prior to an individual's start date with the City of Tallahassee, we go through the same background checks as we always do. For new employees. And we also have a policy right now that requires current employees to disclose to us if they are arrested or have a felony or first-degree misdemeanor charge. So that's all the effect it really would have on the City of Tallahassee policies. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions? Commissioner Miller, followed by Commissioner Maddox.
I'm sorry.
Whichever one you want.
Okay. A couple things. Well, as Ellen knows, until I spoke with her today, I I was conflicted about this, to say quite honestly. There are pros and cons, but my bottom line was that a lot of folks have really come through life and they've stayed out of trouble. That has not been easy for them. And so I don't want us to get to the point where we forget about that. And a lot of those people work for the city. And so I think I was thinking in terms of more violent crimes and that was something that I would certainly want to know about a person. Now, what Ellen has done is reassure me that this information will still be obtained. I'm a little concerned about the point in which, in the hiring process. I mean, if you go and sit and talk with somebody and then give them the idea that you're going to hire them and, oh, no, then later on. I mean, for one thing, I feel for them that you're raising their expectations, so I would like for you to be sensitive to that and have a full discussion with an individual about what they have or have not done in the circumstances surrounding that, and then check that out, with other sources. As long as you continue to do that, then that's fine. Well, and then the other thing that happened is that Dr. Dixon came in, who I've had the pleasure to know and see in operation over the last 4 years, and I think he is absolutely a stellar, amazing individual. And then to have him come in and remind me, I'd forgotten about his story, and reminding me, that had made a difference too. I do feel that this was a little premature. I would like for us to have approached this in a different way, and that's really what I wanted to share with you tonight. There are groups in our state, many of them located here in Tallahassee, because this is a capital, who are expert in the topic of reentry. And I really would like to know from those groups exactly what the city can do to assist in reentry. Because you're right, a black mark against a person for a long time, for life, they're going to be carrying this with them, and a lot of times, frankly, it's for something that when I was growing up, these just mischief type stuff, but now you do something like stealing hubcaps and, you've got a record forever. So, but I would like for us to engage a group that it could advise us on exactly what really works and what doesn't. Because we're going to get rid of the box. Well, what have we really done at the end of the day? We're still doing the same process of hiring after that. And if we really want to address the problem and try to help, then I think we need to take it a little bit of a step further.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is procedural, and then I'll get into my opinion on it. Procedurally, this item comes under policy formation and direction, but it's given to us as a fait accompli because it says no commission action required. So I assume the decision's already been made to change it. which either should be made by the commission, or if it's not made by the commission, it shouldn't come to the commission. So I'm confused how it got to us, but it's already done.
I can tell you how it came to you. It's an administrative policy. But as with any administrative policy that is being changed that could have some significant repercussions in the community, I would bring that to you and formalize it through that process. But it is an administrative policy.
Okay. I guess so. The only suggestion I would have is that there should be a vote on it at the end, which I don't have any problem with. But let me just give you my opinion on it. I believe fully in redemption. And on keeping an open door. But I also believe in disclosure, and that's all we ask for in the city application. In the city application, if you say, yes, you've been convicted of a felony or a first-degree misdemeanor, you're given the opportunity to say what it was, the date of disposition, and what the circumstances are. So it's not just a box. We ask for an explanation. Also, 3 things must be considered before you could disqualify somebody. It's the nature, the job relatedness, severity, and date of the offense in relation to the duties or position you are applying are considered. That didn't come just from us. That's in our application. But that came from Green v. Missouri Pacific Railroad, where the 8th Circuit struck down an employer's use of applications convictions as an absolute bar to employment. It is federal law under the Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission action. So you have federal protection as to what could be a disqualifier. Also, in our own City of Tallahassee personnel and human resource rules, we have a criminal history check is conducted on the top applicant for every city position. A criminal history will not automatically bar an applicant from employment. The nature, job relatedness, severity, and date of the offenses or offense in relation to the duties for the position which you are applying are considered. However, if your answers regarding criminal history on your application do not accurately and completely reflect your criminal history, you may be eliminated from further consideration. So you cannot just be eliminated for having a felony record. Finally, in state law, in Florida Statute 435.07, there are exemptions from disqualification where the head of the appropriate agency may grant to an employee otherwise disqualified from employment an exemption for the disqualification. It goes on the different things that can give an exemption. So we're covered under federal law, we're covered under state law, we're covered under our own rules and regulations. And so all we're doing is removing wording in the application. I think that we should have a disclosure on whether or not you've been convicted of a felony. I would be fine with removing the language of have you ever had the adjudication of guilt withheld for a felony or a first-degree misdemeanor, because I think adjudication of guilt or nolo contendere is a different thing than a conviction. But our duty, first and foremost, is public safety. We have people that are in positions of authority, and they deal with the public. And they safeguard our seniors, and they safeguard our children. I think if someone is convicted of a felony, that they should disclose that. And, of course, it will come out in a background check. But should it not, or should it be missed in the background check, they should have a duty to disclose that. And we should have a duty, which we currently do under local, state, and federal law. We should have a duty not to disqualify an applicant based on simply having a felony conviction if it has no relation to the job that he or she is applying for. So if we are currently discriminating, then we need to address that within our own rules and regulations and our own training of our HR folks. If we are not, I see no reason to remove and change our application to have less disclosure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Zimmer?
So I have a question. So, and maybe I misunderstood, but what you're suggesting is, let's say we were to ban the box, remove the box. And we had several applicants, and we chose an applicant, and then they actually had a criminal background. And we went through the criminal background check. And then we chose not to hire them because it was on there. So we can't use that as a reason not to hire them. Is that correct?
Unless it meets the 3 things: the nature of the offense, job relatedness, and severity and date of the offense in relation to the duties of the position for which you are.
So on some level, aren't we setting ourselves up for potential liability here, lawsuit? if we were to, we can't use it unless it fits one of those three.
Okay. The only point I would make, I don't know about the lawsuit, and we can probably have the city attorney speak to that, but there is always what is the rule, and then there's the question of what is the practice. And this is by no means an accusation against our city staff, because I think you all do an excellent job at trying to vet through these issues and these questions. But I have had personal experience myself where we've had things flagged and have to go back and try to work through the process to make that happen. And that's just for the people that you know. So the question is for all those cases that we don't necessarily know, those individuals who come in and despite the number of conditions that have to exist in order to disqualify someone, the hiring person still gets the discretion around any number of these questions of what the history has been, and determining whether or not someone has which applicant has the best set of skills, so on and so forth. A lot of that is discretionary. We know that. I think we can position ourselves behind what the rule says, or we can, I think, very realistically confront what happens in workplaces all across this community and otherwise. The other piece I would say is we are not in any way, shape, or form abdicating our responsibility for a background check. We are not in any way, shape, or form removing the discretion of a hiring officer to decide whether or not this is an appropriate fit, so on and so forth. This is simply a question of sequencing. And, with all due respect to what the rules are, there is what is the rule, and then there is what actually happens. Commissioner Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with you on that. I mean, when you have experience, when I was in the legislature, Senator Lawson and I did a lot of work with Reverend James on reentry and felons' rights. And when you talk to these folk, they will tell you. I mean, and Commissioner Maddox, you make a compelling argument based on ordinances and state statute. But when you talk to these folk, they'll tell you oftentimes they're deterred from applying for a job if they know they've got to check that box, or they simply won't even apply because they don't get to the language about, well, it doesn't disqualify you, because they think that it will, and in some instances it has. And I agree with the mayor that, we're certainly not abdicating our responsibility. The background check will still be done. It's clear to those applicants that it will be done. I don't think that there's any expectation that a person will be given a job until that background check is done and they are cleared. So I don't know how anyone could leave the process thinking that I could be hired as an accountant and I've gone to jail for embezzlement. Nobody's going to leave with that impression.
There are other background checks that we have that are part of the prerequisite for hiring. So if we make a job offer to someone, either we've already done the background check or they understand that we still have the drug testing or whatever might come up that might be a part of the requirement for that position.
Yeah. So I think if this is something that makes it easier for people to even apply, then I think it's something that we should do as a city.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ziffer?
I've done this circle thing on this, and that is over the past probably 2 weeks since this started to come up, several people have called me about it or run into me and asked me about it. And my initial reaction was always the same, which was, well, this is just the city. This is just going to be our policy. And I was okay with that. And then, talking with other people and then listening to Commissioner Maddox's argument, very compelling argument. The only way I can support this is if we make it absolutely clear that this is just the city of Tallahassee, and this is as far as it goes. Because I don't want to suggest to our business community, we want you to follow our lead. Because that's where my difficulty has come, and I've had a lot of small business people, like I said, call me or run into me and said, look, you're taking away from us. Or because they thought that it involved them, which I clarified. But don't take away from us our right to put things on the application that we think are important with the people that we hire. And I don't want to do that. The second thing is, and it was something Commissioner Maddox mentioned, which is this is this is an administrative issue anyways, which the city manager, from what I understand, is probably going to make this decision anyways. I will say this, though, which is probably the reason why I've come circle, and that is just 2 hours before this meeting, I got a call from someone who is trying to help a young man who evidently, when he was much younger, had a felony conviction. Really one of those wrong place, wrong time. And has had difficulty getting employment and was asking me to try to help. And it was, at that moment when I thought, this is exactly what we're talking about, and that is someone that's caught because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I hope if we approve this policy, those are the folks that we're going to probably be helping. So I am suggesting that I'm going to support very reluctantly, but I want to make it very clear. This is the city of Tallahassee. This is our policy. This doesn't have to do with any private vendors in our area, nor does it have to do with vendors that work with the city of Tallahassee. Because if we try to extend it in any way, I will be adamantly opposed to that.
Commissioner Miller.
I want to say ditto to what Commissioner Ziffer just said. I hope that this does not go anywhere beyond our city hiring. That's who we're talking about here. If we personally want to go out into the community and advocate that businesses do this, that's fine. That's a personal right. But right now, this has to stay at the city.
Yes,
and
we wouldn't have any authority. I wouldn't have any authority to do anything administrative outside of this.
Then this is an administrative issue, and please consider doing the background checks before you offer the people the job. I mean, it's just not fair you're going to do it anyway, and it's just not fair to lead somebody down a primrose path and then say, well, we've changed our minds, essentially. So just be sensitive to that and proceed, and good luck with this.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Maddox. And
I'm sorry.
I just want to close. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I want to say that I believe in restorative justice, and I believe in redemption, and I have no problem giving those that have been convicted of a felony and have paid their debt to society an opportunity for employment. However, I feel like that we have a duty that is much greater than a duty to an applicant. Our duty is to the public and those that we protect. So, again, especially in sensitive positions that we have as it relates to seniors and children, I do not feel comfortable without that disclosure. And I see the will of the commission, so I don't want to prolong it. I would just feel better if we have a motion so I could vote against it.
Okay, before Commissioner Richardson goes, City Manager, because I don't think it's fair, nor do I think it's right for us to leave out this question of our derelicting our responsibility to protect children and families. Could you just talk through your management philosophy with regard to how we protect children and family in the hiring process?
First of all, there are certain areas where we are required to do certain kinds of things, and Ellen is probably better prepared to tell you exactly where those are. So there are certain areas where we would not hire anyone that has a background that says this or that under any circumstances. We just would not do that. In other circumstances, they are like the kinds of things that each of you has mentioned. Someone who 20 years ago did something stupid and they have a clear record for 20 years, but it's still on their record, and we would have to make a case-by-case decision in that regard. Believe me, the waivers are very few and far between even now. When someone comes forward and they have some sort of a record, and I have a department director or someone saying, this is a good person, this is a person who did something 15 years ago and has had a clear record ever since, and so forth and so on, it still requires conversation between the city attorney and myself, and just an understanding in general that we agree that this is a case that requires that kind of thing. So it's not a decision that is made lightly under any circumstances, even after we have done the criminal history check.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Richardson, followed by Commissioner Ziffer, followed by Commissioner Maddox.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief. I just want to thank the city manager for bringing this to us. She could have made this decision on her own. It is an administrative decision. But I'm sure had she done that unilaterally, there would have been pushback from commissioners, but she brought it to us so that we could have this kind of discussion. So that if questions were raised in the community, we wouldn't be blindsided. And so I thank the manager for bringing this to us so that we could have this kind of free flow of discussion and debate when she could have made the decision on her own. And I think that there will be safeguards in place. There have been instances where people with criminal records have not checked the box, and they were caught when background checks were eventually done. So it works both ways. But I think that there will be safeguards in place to ensure that nobody who has a violent past or any offense against the elderly or children are hired by the city of Tallahassee in any position, but certainly, not in sensitive positions where, that's what they were convicted of. And so I just want to thank the city manager for even bringing this to us and giving us the opportunity to have input in this kind of free flow of discussion and debate.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ziffer.
Having said that, if there's an appetite on the part of my colleagues, I'd like to know what some of those conditions are and actually have them in the policy. And so what I'm going to suggest is maybe the city manager, some of those areas that she's suggesting would not happen. Right now we don't have that anywhere in here. Is perhaps this could come back to us in 2 weeks with what those policy exclusions are and give us a clearer picture, because right now we're not looking at anything like that. We're just looking at everything. So perhaps we could look at what some of these other municipalities have done. Maybe they have some exclusions, certain areas, for example, the county, or having to deal with certain parts of Parks and Recreation where it's not allowed, period, so that we could have those exclusions, because I'd like to look at that, and I think Commissioner Miller, that was clearly a concern of yours. So I don't know if there's an appetite on the part of anybody else here to push it back for 2 weeks with some clarification, or to just go ahead and vote now.
We don't have a motion. We're not voting.
Well, what I was going to entertain once the comments were completed were an endorsement of the manager to move in this direction and to develop whatever requisite policies there are to carry out. Commissioner.
Well, during all this time and talking to folks, it's come to my attention that we have already taken 2 boxes out. One was race and one was gender, which I'm completely supportive of both of those being removed. However, neither one of those had anything to do with an individual's choice at any given moment. And so this is a little bit different category of topic.
That's not exactly correct, is it? I didn't think it was.
No, I'm sorry. The race and gender boxes, those questions continue to remain on the application for EEO reporting purposes.
I was wondering how you did that.
But they're suppressed. So when Human Resources gets the application, we have that data, and we extract that data for EEO reporting, but when we send it to the departments, it's suppressed.
Right. Which is great, I think. I go back to my original comments, though, on the fact that this is a little bit higher level with more ramifications and more facets, so to speak. I think that we really ought to, if you really are committed to trying to make a difference, it's more than just banning the box. And I think that's a commission discussion. So,
well, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think you're right that there are a number of entities that are out in the community who are already have been working on the whole reentry discussion, and I'm sure they'd be happy to come to a quality of life or target issue or whatever you might think might be appropriate in that regard.
In fact, I'm going to reference a meeting that Secretary Wansley Walters is holding a little later this month here in the city chambers that will speak to that. But we have looked at preliminary research around recidivism, so on and so forth. The crime task force that we have empowered has come back with a number one concern that the best way to help reduce crime is to give people a job. It's to create pathways of opportunity for them to work, thereby diminishing some other bad choices. But the research is pretty declarative out there around making job opportunities available as a means of reducing recidivism and crime.
And Mayor, just on point, I mean, I understand that. That makes total sense. The fact is, though, if they don't have a GED, if they can't read or write, we can give them a job all day long, but it's not going to last. And so that even is not enough.
As a closing, and then
Yeah,
I'd be
please.
glad to vote on. I just wanted to be clear that I was not in any way inferring that the city of Tallahassee would hire someone in a sensitive position that has a disqualifying felony. My point is that today there are 2 checks for that. And the list that Commissioner Ziffer is asking for is between a level 1 and a level 2 screening. It's in Chapter 435 of Florida statutes that and state law that governs which each one of the levels are. But today we have 2 checks on that. Check number 1 is we ask the person for disclosure. Mm-hmm. Check number 2 is our own background check. After today, if we move forward with the action that is being recommended or has already been taken, there will only be 1 check, which is criminal background check. My thing, my statement is that we owe a duty to keep the 2 checks. I think that in order to safeguard, in case the criminal background check misses something, and we all know computers are fallible, misses something, we have the 2nd check in place. But I didn't want anybody to think that we were not screening people in sensitive positions. I know that we absolutely are and appreciate
And then
that.
some, huh?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But disclosure, they are still able to disclose.
If they choose to.
In that process. And I have heard situations, as I think Commissioner Richardson brought up, of folks choosing to disclose and then only later, choosing to disclose and, of course, later having the record substantiated, and then not choosing to disclose, and then it being caught on the back end. So, neither of the checks are absolute, but the appropriate safeguards exist and are in place to find that information out, certainly to the extent that it exists in a system. So I don't know where commissioners are as a result of, I think, the question that was raised. I think the Commissioner Ziffer's question around additional material that highlights what the state exemptions are might be some informational material that, Ellen, you probably could email or provide to him. Commissioners,
to
all of us,
yes.
the entire commission. But that being said, is there a willingness for a motion to endorse this direction, or do you all want to wait to receive an email with that material?
Mr. Mayor, I'm comfortable with making a motion to endorse the concept of the city manager moving forward with banning the box.
Is there a second?
If there is any concern about that, we can not take any action to make it a policy until February to give you a chance to get some comfort level with it.
Okay. There's a motion and I'm sorry, is there a second? Second. The manager has indicated that she'd be willing to hold until you all have had an opportunity to review the information if there are additional flags that would change the will of the majority of the commission. She's willing to hear them. There's a motion and a second to endorse the position. I want to
That was a second. I just said there was no second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said second. I'm sorry. Is there no second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second considering those conditions. And again, this is an endorsement. I want to make sure we have a bifurcation between authority and endorsement of the manager's policy. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those
I thought we were postponing a permanent decision on this until we receive more information.
she was postponing implementation until additional information is provided.
So how can we vote on this till we have the additional information?
Listen, I'm willing to do what you all, there's a will to do. So there was a motion, there was a second. We're making sausages, so I know it can be messy sometimes.
I'd really like the information in front of me before I vote.
Okay.
And I think that'd be better off because, quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, I think you're probably going to have more support once we have that. Because right now we're voting on something that is this is what we're probably not probably this is what we're going to do, but you don't have in front of you. This is what our exclusions are, but you don't have in front of you. And I would feel a lot more comfortable because you could see I clearly, even though I seconded, was hesitant, and I believe in what we're trying to do here. But I sure would like to have some very specific areas that absolutely, positively, this is not going to happen.
Gotcha.
So.
Mr. Mayor, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, great. So there is no motion on the floor. We will agenda this for the 28th.
Okay.
Is that correct? All right. Thank you, Commissioners, for a robust conversation.
Thank you.
Let's now move on to item 13.05, which is authorization of local government contributions for affordable housing developments. Madam, or Michael Parker or Manager?
Yeah. 5 local affordable housing developments are seeking low-income housing tax credits in the current application cycle that's being conducted by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. And you've done this before. Supported agencies that were interested in competing. And to compete for these funds, the projects must demonstrate a funding commitment by the city. As you recall, we've provided the assistance to agencies previously who are seeking state funding, and we really haven't discriminated on who we've provided it to. If it appears that they're from our community and they may get selected to be a part of this, what we've done in the past is provide $37,500 for each project from the Water and Sewer Waiver Program to meet the application requirements. And the listing of the agencies is found in the agenda item. Michael Parker is here to answer any questions.
There's a motion and a second. Commissioner Maddox.
Mr. Parker, wasn't there a Scribner's error on the number of units on one of the?
Yes, well, these are estimates at this point in time, and we did receive a update from one of them, developers, that it may be, and that was for the project that was being done in Frenchtown, it may be 78 to 80 units rather than the 84 that was in their original proposal. All of the numbers are actually estimates, and they'll be finalizing them as they put their application.
Just so the record reflects that, so it doesn't affect their application for tax credits.
And
Commissioner Miller?
now, Mr. Parker, my understanding is that this is very competitive. Is that what you told me?
Correct.
And that very likely, if one of these entities gets this, that will be the only one. I just wanted to make sure that you really don't think that we're obligating ourselves to more than $37,000.
In fact, it's my understanding that by practice, because there are 26 counties that are competing for this pool of approximately $13 million, that no more than one project in any county will be approved.
Mm-hmm. And you also said that this is in the way that the match is offered is through the hookup
Water
fees,
and sewer favor.
but only it's a credit of $37,500 toward the hookup fee, and they'll pay the difference.
Well, actually, what's required for the application is they need to show a minimum local government commitment of $37,500, which is what we're asking you for. The actual, if one of these projects is fortunate enough to be selected, then they will apply for the Water and Sewer Waiver Program through the city. For multifamily projects, our current policy indicates that there's a cap of $150,000 on a project, subject to the availability of funds in that pool. It's based on the actual expenses that they incur, because every multifamily project, the actual water sewer connection fee is calculated based on the number of units and the size of the connection. So in no instance, if any of these projects were received, would they be eligible for less than $37,500. What you're approving right now is that for any applicant that gets selected, we'll have a commitment of $37,500, but they will apply through the water sewer program for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Maddox, I didn't understand your question about the number. I want to make sure we're okay on that. What was your point about the Scrivener's error?
Yeah, it just needs to accurately reflect the record, so when they go make their application for housing,
okay.
Right, they have the right number, and I think by Mr. Parker's testimony today, that fixes it.
And it is 84 instead of?
It's 78 instead of 84.
It's 78, and the issue is that those numbers get finalized as we speak. And the issue has been in the past, because this is so competitive, even though that you're giving approval, any information in the agenda item could be a subject for someone to challenge it. So that's why these numbers are estimates of what the number of units they're going to build. They'll be finalized when they do their actual application.
Great. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I know that there is a desperate need for low and moderate income housing in the city of Tallahassee, and I would hope that all of the applicants are successful. For that reason alone, that we need to put families in housing in our community. And I think that the city in whatever way we possibly can, should be supporting those organizations that are attempting to do that. So I'm comfortable, particularly if we're funding it through a waiver program. But even if it were to call for additional revenues from the city, if it's within what we can provide, then I think we should support that as a city, because there are families out there that you'd be surprised at the kind of housing that they're living in currently because low and moderate income housing is not available. We've got a glut of student apartments, but there is not enough low and moderate income housing in our community to meet the need. So I hope that all of our applicants have a competitive application and that it's clear to the state of Florida that we stand behind those agencies that are submitting those applications.
Well said. Any other questions? Excuse me. Seeing none, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. All right, we're on to the Edison Restaurant update.
Yes. Item 13.06. And Commissioners, at a recent meeting, I believe it was in November, you requested a status update on the progress of the Edison Restaurant. The building and environmental permit has been approved, and the Edison Restaurant is now ready to proceed with construction. They've advised us that Cascades Holding is finalizing the terms of the construction contract and that their financing package should be approved this week. They're asking us to look at a January 29th potential date for groundbreaking. Is Mark here? Mark Bedoin is here to answer any questions you might have on the project.
Tentatively planning January 26th. I wanted to make that correction.
First question.
We changed that. That's changed since the original letter? Yeah, no, that's been changed because that date wasn't possible.
I got a call today from Adam Corey saying it was the 26th.
Yes.
I think we're confused on that.
So if he's the last to know.
Why don't we say by the end of January?
Okay, we'll get back with you definitely on the date.
Everybody's available. I'm not relevant.
Well, just be aware that we really need to know if we're going to schedule things.
We'll let you know by tomorrow.
Okay, that's
great. Other questions, Commissioner Miller? Did you have a
couple things based on the conversation that I also had a conversation with Adam Corey today, and he said that they had finished all of these things that were just recapped as being in the works. So you might want to let us know about that too tomorrow, if you don't mind.
Can you be specific?
He said that the loan approval had been received and that
we were not aware of that as of yesterday.
And they have permits, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We are aware of the permits.
So they do have their permits.
Mm-hmm. They definitely have their permits. I'm not aware of the loan approval, but they did tell us they should have it by the end of this week.
So,
yes, ma'am. We met with the developer, and Mr. Corey was on the phone today. I didn't get a sense that there was a final approval because they were waiting on the permits, which were issued on Monday or approved on Monday.
So if everything goes well, do we know when this will open?
Yes, talking about July now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. They said 150 days after construction?
Right.
Finally.
Any other questions? There's no action. Right. This is just an update, so no action required, Commissioners. Next item is 13.07, the fiscal year 2014 budgetary closeout. Madam Manager.
Commissioners, this agenda item presents the budgetary closeout for the fiscal year 2014, which has been completed and is being presented to the Commission for acceptance. All operating and capital funds were closed in accordance with the city's existing policies, and I'm pleased to report that overall we ended the year in a very good position. Let me ask Raul if he will come and highlight the closing.
Thank you, Madam Manager, Mayor, and Commissioners. As Manager indicated, this is a good news story. We ended the year in a positive position with the majority of the funds, and those funds that ended the year with us with some sort of deficit, those deficits had been originally budgeted, but the good news is that the deficits are a lot less than originally planned. This wouldn't have been possible without the hard work of all the departments and departmental management, as well as the budget office and accounting that worked really hard throughout the year to make sure that expenditures were delayed as appropriate, hiring was delayed as appropriate, so we can have some savings on the expenditure side in the areas that we knew that we had some concerns. Just briefly as a summary, the manager indicated that the majority of the funds ended up in the positive. The general fund, which is the one that we're always concerned with, ended with about $152,000 surplus. This is the 6th year in a row, even with tough times that we've had, that we've been able to ensure that the general fund at the end of the year ends up with a surplus. The other funds that ended at surpluses in the agenda item really goes over all the detail, all the numbers. But the building inspection fund had a surplus because of all the activity. As you all recall, we had loaned them some funding out of the deficiencies fund when they weren't bringing revenue to support their operations. That loan is almost paid off. They've got about $600,000 balance left. The loan initially was over $2 million, so it's a move in the right direction. Electric fund ended the year with a surplus. We thought they were going to come in with a deficit of about $1 million. Their surplus is almost $3 million. All that money is being transferred to their operating reserve, which per policy is below the targeted rates that we've identified. Gas ended with a surplus. Water ended with a surplus. All the funds there, if the operating reserves are not up to policy level, we'll transfer them to make them whole per policy, and any excess surplus will go to support future capital projects. Those funds will go into the RR&I accounts. Solid waste also ended the year with a surplus. We had anticipated some sort of deficit when we approved the budget. They have a $500,000 surplus, and that's as a result of significant savings in operations, rerouting some CNG vehicles that they implemented last year, and their funds surplus go to the rate stabilization fund. The stormwater fund almost broke even, came in with a slight surplus of about $74,000. That goes to their RR&I account also for future capital projects. Heilemann also came in with a slight surplus, about $5,000 more than originally budgeted. That also goes to their RR&I account for future projects. And Star Metro ended the year with requiring a little bit more transfer from the general fund, but the positive news with Star Metro is that their expenditures year over year are actually going down. So they've been making some changes out there to reduce expenditures, so they're moving in a positive direction. The one fund that we do have a little bit of concern, and I've mentioned this in our briefings today, is the cemetery fund. We are still using funds from the Perpetual Care Trust Fund at a rate that, if we continue at the current rate, will deplete that fund in the next 18 to 20 years. You know, that fund's been set up for perpetual maintenance of the cemeteries. So as we go through the next year's budget process, the next couple of years, we're going to have to figure out what we need to do to shore up the financial condition of that fund. So overall, very good news for the closeout. We usually bring this at the end of the year to bring you good news at the end of the year, but we decided to start off the year with good news. As far as the future budget, we will start developing projections for next year's budget in the next couple of weeks, and we anticipate bringing you some sort of update on that in the next month or so. That's all we have to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank our staff for a job well done on the budget, and to thank the commissioners that served prior to this body who have made good fiscal decisions. With the $152,000 surplus at the end of the year, it goes to the deficiency fund. The deficiency fund is now $20 million? $21 million. It reached a low of about $4 million during the recession. It is now at about 90% of the desired fund balance. So that is really good conservative fiscal governance. And I appreciate this body. I appreciate our professional staff and those that have gone before us in making those decisions because it has certainly served the city well. And on a brief note on the deficiency in the cemetery fund and the perpetual care, having to continue to go in the perpetual care fund, I believe that we have additional cemetery space that can be utilized. And I'd like to suggest that the manager appoint a committee from funeral home directors, perhaps Masonic organizations that deal with burials, et cetera, to make some suggestions on possible ways that we can utilize property we already have for expansion in our cemeteries.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Ziffer?
I'd like to include in that, and I think Bert Davey was one, and I'm trying to remember the other individual, came and spoke to me about green burials, which are, I know that there's one in Gainesville, and we have quite a few people that have died that have actually been buried in Gainesville because they don't have the ability to have a green burial here. It is basically a very light impact on the land, to the point where basically if you look across, you're really not going to see very much that would even resemble a cemetery other than a flat stone of some kind, but very little disruption. And so I think there's probably, I know we own 500 acres up in the Welaunee area, and some of that, I think one of the things we discussed is there's actually a green space that we're required to keep in some of that can be utilized for cemeteries. So we clearly have land available to us. And I think you're right, Commissioner Maddox. The quicker we get this resolved, because this has been sitting out there for several years now, the quicker we're off to get it back on positive footing.
We got to do something, because I don't care how green it is, I'm not going to be buried in Gainesville.
Chuck Hobbs will help you with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can leave it to Commissioner Maddox. I want to commend the city manager and her staff for the work that they've done, and of course past commissioners for their fiscal policies. This is one of those good news stories that the community should hear about, and I know we've got a Tallahassee Democrat reporter in the room. I'd like to see this be a front page story tomorrow. The good fiscal stewards that we've been with the taxpayers' dollars, savings that have come as a result of holding down expenses without harming programs or having to cut programs, and increasing those reserve funds that we know are important, particularly during times of recession or if calamities happen. We have the money to continue to operate our government. And so, again, I think this is one of those good news stories that the entire community needs to hear about, particularly those who find it a sport to bash government about what we do wrong. They need to hear about what we're doing right and providing for government services in this community. So, again, commendations to you, Madam Manager, and your staff for the work that you've done over the years, and certainly to this body for your fiscal oversight.
So I see a headline in the Democrat that says, "I will not be buried in Gainesville." Scott Maddox.
That's fine. How green
what kind of photo would you use with that? I'm just curious.
The swamp.
That's a tweet.
The swamp. Good. Great.
It's an update or a motion. Commissioner Miller.
I second Commissioner Richardson's commendation of the manager, because the management that has gone on with this particular year and this budget and the last 4 budgets that I've had a chance to look at, it is so obvious when you look at these funds step by step by step, where if there is not in every case, expenses have been kept down and we're expended below expectations. So many times are those expenses below, even though revenue is down, they were still able to either come out even or with a surplus, or come out with a deficit that was much lower than they expected to have, in spite of the fact that often revenues were lower. So I shout out to all of the division heads, all of the department heads in the city, because I know that it took a great deal of hands-on financial management in every department in the city to accomplish what we have here in front of us today.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments? I believe that's information. Commissioners, we're now going back to item 9.02, the Tallahassee Ethics Board appointment. Madam Manager.
The action is to accept the report.
I apologize. We need to accept the report.
And authorize the year-end adjustments.
There's a motion and a second to authorize to accept the report and authorize the adjustments. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion passes.
I'm seeing why Commissioner Ziffer was so confused about this issue, because we were thinking there was another item that this was going to compare, right, was going to be with. So Jim Cook is going to introduce this item.
I thought maybe it was just my iPad. It's just the only one that
I
didn't
thought
have
the
it.
same thing. I thought
No, you all were right. We skipped that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Madam Manager and Mayor. Just wanted to, introduce the item briefly. As you are well aware, the citizens approved a 7-member ethics board in November and called for appointment to that board. A number of individuals from different appointing individuals or bodies, and one of the appointments obviously comes from the City Commission. That's the item that you will take up for action tonight. But I just wanted to point out for you and the public that the other appointments have been made. They're listed in the agenda item, but the state attorney has appointed Cecil Davis. President of Florida A&M has appointed Funmi Ojitayo. The president of Florida State University has appointed Richard Herring. So those 3 positions were called for in the referendum in the charter amendment language. Those appointments have been received. In addition, there was an appointment to be made by the chief judge, who has declined to make an appointment, and then the 5th appointment will be the one that you make. That group that is appointed will then have probably their first action will be to select the additional 2 members. That was provided for also in the charter amendment. So they will have that responsibility to round out the ethics board. And as we've gone through this process for you, the names of those who have applied are identified in your agenda item. We had a number of applications received, a couple of whom were not eligible as they're not registered city electors, maybe not residents of the city, or not registered to vote. But wanted to also point out we had a couple of individuals reach out to us this week who identified that they had attempted to submit an application that they had not been received. Those names, Sarah Berner and Gabe Warren, were forwarded to each of you in emails this week based upon those conversations. I think there was an electronic communications error. Email went to the wrong place, and either they didn't get a notice that it hadn't been received, and likewise we weren't aware that the item had been submitted. So we've communicated with them, received those applications. We submitted those to you over the last 2 days so that you would have them, but wanted to point that out since 1 or 2 of you had asked me about those items. And so with that,
Mr. Cook, once this board is formed, they also get to select
2 members,
2 additional members,
right? 2 additional members. So
and they will take from those who have applied, or they'll come up with their own process around how they want to do that.
The language provided does not specify how they will do it. It specifies that they will do it, so that those 4 who have been appointed after you make an appointment this evening will select. I would expect that they would take whatever assistance they can receive. We'll be glad to provide every application we've received, and whether they were received before or after our anticipated deadline of December 31st, they certainly are available, or not available, but have the opportunity to receive additional applications, to bring suggestions of their own. So they're not constrained, but we'll provide them with everything that we have and support that we can offer.
Great. Thank you.
I'll move 9.02.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Commissioner Richardson.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The question that I have, if the chief judge has declined to make an appointment, and I know it's not because he didn't want to make the appointment, but was there a canon that forbade him from doing that? I know there was a reason why he chose not to make that appointment. That leaves the board with 4 members, and then they would choose 2, which is then an even number. And so what would they do in the event of a tie vote? And then what do we do as a result of the chief judge not being able to make that appointment? Will that then require another amendment to the charter or to this language?
Commissioner, the judge obviously in his response to the mayor's invitation to make the appointment did not explain why he did not make an appointment. Okay. He has subsequently, through his judicial assistant, indicated that he would not comment on his failure to make the appointment. So there's no language in the charter that provides for a specific procedure should one or more of the five not make an appointment. So from reviewing this and actually having asked a couple of outside attorneys involved with elections and boards to review in this same situation, my opinion at this time is that the position would remain unfilled. There's no indication from the judge, should there be a new chief judge, and typically those positions do rotate, that a different chief judge would not make an appointment, number one. Number two, there's always, should that occur and a second chief judge not make an appointment, one option would be, if it is creating an operational problem on the ethics board, to amend the amendment to provide precisely for a procedure to take care of that, or to give the additional appointment to an alternative entity. Right. So that would be appointment, a possibility down the road. I presume, unless there's some case authority or legal theory that has not yet been presented to me, and several people have offered different possibilities, that we will proceed with a 6-member board with a vacancy. A 3-3 vote would mean that a majority did not vote on a particular item, so it would not pass. That is always a potential problem. On the other hand, many boards operate largely by consensus, so in that case it would not be a problem. Right. So that's where we stand right now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions? Just want to say on the nomination of Lila that I see that you're here in the room, and I apologize profusely that we sort of skipped over this and are now rounding back, but Lila is eminently qualified for this position. She has served twice, been an appointee of Governor Jeb Bush, twice to the Public Service Commission, serving both as a commissioner and a chair of that board. I've got even more familiar with Lila as she served as chair of the Leadership Florida, which, as you all know, is a pretty impressive group of leaders all across the state, and serves on the board there. I also think it is valuable to have someone who has had that experience, the longevity of experience of the ethics panel, so that group knows the real wealth of information that was shared there, the recommendations that were adopted, so that they don't have to feel like they're starting from ground zero by the formation of a new board. So really pleased to support her appointment to this commission, and I think that she'll serve us well. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I would, if I may, add a couple of thoughts as we proceed. Now that the appointments are complete, your appointed officials will assist that group as much as we possibly can as they get going with their order of business. We'll reach out to them and discuss with them potential opportunities for initial meeting dates and organizational meetings and that sort of thing. We'll keep you apprised as we go forward there. Also wanted to point out while we're talking about ethics that for the public's awareness as well, you're all well aware that last week the elected and appointed officials were part of a training session on ethics, public records, sunshine law, which served two purposes: a state legislative change that went into effect January of 2015 requires 4 hours of that sort of training. So you have to be among the very first. If it went into, I think January 4th might be the date, and your training was the 7th, so you're pretty timely. And then we'll make that presentation also available to the group as well, just so they'll know the things that are going on. Just wanted to be sure I mentioned that as part of your ongoing efforts to implement the things you approved and have continued to direct us to do an implementation of the various ethics recommendations that you've approved and codified.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Good luck. Item 13.08, the authorization to provide funding for the new public access for America's First Christmas.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anything absolutely relevant to add, Wayne? Seeing none,
We've talked about this a lot.
Right. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. 13.09, emergency preparedness for weather and disease-related events.
Commissioners, this is an update to you, and it requires about a 10-minute presentation. If you would like to have this, there's no urgency for this item. We've moved it a couple of times, but it's up to you.
Out of respect for staff who's probably prepared, would you let's let them do the presentation. Thank you.
All right. Basically, the item is to brief you on the city's state of preparedness for weather events and pandemic events that many cities in our nation have already experienced. Some obviously being more prepared than others at the time of the occurrence. We have two presenters this evening, Chief Gaines, Jerome Gaines, Fire Chief, and Robbie Powers are here to provide a brief presentation and to answer any questions you might have. Robbie.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioners and Mayor and Ms. Favors. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you all about the preparedness of the city of Tallahassee. As you know, that we were faced with some severe weather this past couple weeks with some cold weather. Last year, same time, we had wind chills of about 8 degrees, icing of roads. I want to let you know that the city of Tallahassee has a great team that's been put together, and we've utilized the incident command system to formulate how we do business in the city, and that we're ready to respond to anything that happens in our community, and partnered up with our county partners, our state partners, and our surrounding communities. As far as the Ebola event that happened, and it's currently happening right now, again, we partnered up with the county. The county health department was our lead, and we gathered up together, and we did some exercises, preparing our teams, work with the fire department, EMS, and other responders, our police department, to ensure that we were prepared to respond to any event that may happen in our community concerning a pandemic. And as of right now, keep track on everything going on. And the rate has definitely decreased about, they're finding about 1 case or in the 1s to 10 case over in Africa right now. So it's doing great. It's starting to dwindle on, so they stay on top of it. Kind of like the flu season. Once you get your flu shot and stay on top of it, drink plenty of fluids, everything will take care of itself. And they're hoping by June and March that they will have basically calmed everything down over in that area. So any questions?
I would like to comment that I've actually had people contact me about this and ask if we have emergency plans in place, and I was able to email them back some work that you all have done because I have such confidence in you. I don't ever worry about it myself, but then it was kind of a surprise to get the question, and was glad to be able to respond that you were on top of it.
Thank you. Actually, we had a plan in place when H1N1, the swine flu, kicked off, and we were actually doing a great program up in Thomasville, Georgia, working with all of our health officials and law enforcement folks, preparing for such an event when it actually broke as a pandemic. So we were on top of it.
Good.
Thank you all very much for always being ever ready for whatever the circumstance might be, so I appreciate it. Chief Gaines, you have a part of the presentation?
Just want to echo what Mr. Powers has said. We're ready, we're equipped, we're trained, and we're prepared to make sure the citizens are safe.
Great. I get great confidence from you, man. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Commissioners, any other questions?
I appreciate their brevity.
Yeah, much appreciated. And your service, too, of
And
course.
there really was a presentation.
Yes, but...
Great. Commissioners, we're now on target issue updates, and I believe the only target issue update this evening is financial viability of the government. Commissioner Maddox had to step out for a quick call, so I'm going to give the update on his behalf. With regard to solar gardens, staff presented an item which will allow the city to diversify its energy portfolio through large-scale solar generation. as Rick Fernandez says, the sweet spot with regard to the building of the solar farms is around the production of roughly 10 megawatts, which requires about 10 acres for every megawatt. So in total, about 100 acres to produce a 10 megawatt power generating facility. Several solar business models were discussed, including power purchase agreements with third-party special purpose entities and nonprofits, as well as utility operated model. We gave advice to the staff during our meeting that they should move forward and do their respective due diligence and bring back an item at some point for the Commission's consideration with regard to the diversification of our generating electric generating utility. NuScale teaming agreement. Staff requested permission to execute a teaming agreement with NuScale Energy. The agreement outlines the city's ongoing role in Florida Initiative for Nuclear Power. This agreement does not obligate the city to any direct cost. It's simply an opportunity for the city to explore long-term generation opportunities. At the core of this project is a small-scale modular reactor technology, which I think, put in layman's terms, is not your gigantic nuclear plant, but rather sort of reactor units that are more modular in nature. It allows for smaller nuclear facilities to be constructed in a shorter time frame and at a reduced cost. And then finally, we had an update on the fire services assessment, and staff is currently working with our consultant to review the fire assessment fee that's charged to city residents as part of their monthly utility bill. Staff has been coordinating with the county on any range of rate changes, which will be effective beginning October 1st of this year. So they're moving forward in due diligence to negotiate the terms of that survey, and we'll bring that item back to us once it's ready. Those are our three items. I ran through them quickly, but as you can tell, two biggies there with regard to solar, and obviously the nuclear reactor facilities, and then obviously the fire services update, which we have all, I think, been briefed on and will continue to be briefed on. And that is it for the committee updates. If there are no questions, we'll move on to unagendaed speakers. As a reminder to our speakers, you do have 3 minutes to address the City Commission on an item that is not agended this evening, or that is. And the light scheme over there, green means go, yellow means you got a minute, and red means to stop. Treasurer Clerk, any speakers?
We do have speakers, Mayor. The first of the speakers is Harry Brown. He will be followed by Joseph Webster. And I'll ask Mr. Brown to come forward. And as he comes forward, also mention that I think that light turns yellow with 30 seconds. So
sorry, 30.
Just and if they'll give their name and address for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Harry Brown. Hey, Harry. I reside at 5431 Crump Road, Tallahassee, Florida. I would first like to ask the Commission and everybody in this community, let us help stamp out racism. Racism is abundant and bountiful in the city of Tallahassee. I experienced racism for my entire 20 years as I worked here for the city. And I had a legal counsel that I hired who said he saw that racism had been going on for decades. And I can tell you right now, it is still going on. And as I talk to commissioners, I can see 60% of you don't know what racism is. You don't know what it is. And I've had city workers say I was vitriolic when I came to speak about racism. Of course, you may consider it vitriolic because it doesn't even sound good. And I can tell you, it certainly doesn't feel good. Okay? You're the privileged group, so you don't know. But I understand every time it seems that I get up here to speak, Scott Maddox run. Because I'm here to talk about him and continue to talk about him with the dirty stuff that he has done. I'm going to continue to talk about it until somebody quiets me. But Scott Maddox, when he came on, the first thing he did was fire a black OMB director. Next thing he did was he fired black comptroller. And Anita Favors, you helped him. Okay?
The commission doesn't fire people, Mr. Brown.
They fire under what's called your powers.
They have 4 people that they hire and fire.
Anyway, are you talking back with me? Are we going to have a dialogue?
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Anita, you should gird yourself in the mind of truth and decency and release Dot from the albatross of lying for you just to cover up for Scott Maddox and having signed a false affidavit. You took care of her by giving her a $30,000 promotion, and she still stole $5 from a United Way fundraiser. It's known that if you tell a lie, you steal.
Excuse me, your 3 minutes have expired.
Thank you very much. I'll finish it the next time. I never did see your yellow light come on, but I know how you guys do it. Thank you very much.
Great. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Joseph Webster, and then Ed Hollifield.
Mr. Mayor, fellow commissioners, first, thanks for the opportunity to come tonight. I want to talk about health care, and I share with Commissioner Miller that we want to talk from a high commitment level. I want to speak specifically about a project that the city is partnering with called BUILD, the BUILD Challenge. The BUILD Challenge is to holistically address issues of health and safety in the south side of Tallahassee. You may recall that Tallahassee has at least 47,000 uninsured residents. And it is my understanding that the city did not take a position on Medicaid expansion when our governor refused the dollars from Washington, D.C. And South City has some 2,000 to 4,000 residents, depending upon who you read. 800 of those are uninsured, and there are 46,000 additional uninsured individuals. It's my understanding that the city has agreed to work in partnership with the BUILD Challenge. The BUILD Challenge is a combination of Robert Wood Johnson Kresge Foundation to help cities go upstream and eliminate what we call health disparities. And the city, in conjunction with, as a partner, Whole Child Leon, TMH, FSU College of Medicine, and the South City Revitalization Council, has proposed to get some money to, again, study the problem, studying the problem of what causes social determinants. The World Health Organization defines social determinants, those things that society does to people. There's society-invoked laws and policies that create the circumstances within which people live. So the city of Tallahassee, social determinants had determined that black folks did not have any access to health care from 1845 until 1968, when TMH finally opened its doors to black citizens. In 1911, 103 years ago, FAMU started working in the community to try to take care of poor people. It took student fees, actually, to help take care of poor people. When this city was giving TMH, starting in 1979, a $1 a year lease, it charges neighborhood $4,000 a month to take care of poor people. So social determinants are determined by society, and society write the laws, write the policies, and make the decisions. But what troubles me about this is that FAMU, the only entity in this community that has perennially been there to take care of poor people, was not at the planning table when this challenge grant proposal was presented to TMH and to others, and is now well on its way to Princeton to be funded. I agree with Commissioner Maddox in absentia. I believe in restorative justice, but I'm opposed to recycling injustice. And what we're doing here is recycling perpetual injustice.
Excuse me, your
How-
3 minutes have expired.
How can FAMU not be included in a holistic idea and this city consider that ethical? I thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ed Hollifield, followed by Bob Fulford. And that would be the last speaker that I have a form for.
I'm going to need at least 4 minutes, but you need to hear what I have to say. Ed Hollifield, Longleaf Court. Is a $171 million building that TMH plans to name after M.T. Mustin a monument to bigotry? White supremacy at TMH was different from many other hospitals in the South. Charity Hospital in New Orleans, for example, they would not let a black person die in front of the hospital. Rather, they would admit them and send them to a segregated ward for blacks only. But they would be treated, and many would live who otherwise would have died if they had not been admitted. Grady Hospital in Atlanta was the same way. It was just as segregated as Charity. However, Grady would not allow a black person to die in front of the hospital. Like Charity, the black person would be admitted. They would treat the black person on a racially segregated ward, thereby preventing the deaths of untold numbers of black people. But at Tallahassee Memorial, black life didn't matter. Tallahassee Memorial would rather a black person die than be admitted to the hospital. And oral history confirms this. Some did die. This was our Holocaust. My Jewish friends say, Dr. Hollifield, never forget. I think that's good advice. The mentality of this attitude at TMH, no different from what happened to the Jews in Nazi Germany in the name of white supremacy, or the Roma. No different from apartheid in South Africa. On or about 1966, Dr. Russell Anderson applied for staff privileges at Tallahassee Memorial. He was denied despite having earned a MD from Howard University and a PhD in biological science in 1933 from the University of Pittsburgh. Think about that, a black man with a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh being denied by Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. He was more qualified than anybody they had on the staff. I'll be through shortly. On June 17, 1966, Robert Nash, chief of the Federal Office of Equal Health Opportunity, wrote a letter to Mustin.
Excuse me, your 3 minutes have expired.
I'll be through shortly.
We're going to need to wrap up.
With discrimination on the basis of race, which limits the admission of non-white patients to the hospital, discrimination on the basis of race, which limits the access of Negro physicians to staff privileges, we were Negroes back then, and discrimination on the basis of race in the assignment of patients to rooms resulting in segregation by rooms. Nash told Mustin that his failure to respond within 10 days, quote, may necessitate a finding that compliance with the law cannot be secured by voluntary means, close quote. The city, through its lease agreement with TMH, should deny TMH the right to float a bond for the construction of what is indeed a monument to bigotry on its property. It should also charge TMH fair market value in rent rather than $1 a year.
Thank you,
TMH
Dr. Hollifield. Will you do me a favor and will you submit the remainder of your comments to the Treasurer Clerk? That way we can get a copy of it.
I appreciate it. Would you mind submitting the remainder of your comments to the Treasurer Clerk so we can read a copy of it?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Bob Fulford, and he's the last speaker we have, Mayor.
I had planned to speak in reference to the appointment of Mrs. Jaber, but somehow or other I got my thing in too late, so I don't have anything to say.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other speakers to come before the commission?
No, sir.
All right. Seeing none, commission information sharing of ideas. Commissioner Ziffer, followed by?
I've got several different things. The first is, and I know that we are working towards some kind of resolution quickly. I know the city attorney's involved. Could we put, and I'm not sure what the agenda looks like for the latter part of January, but I would like to have a presentation on what we're doing about these bandit signs for a couple of reasons. The first thing is so the commission can have a discussion, but also to make it abundantly clear to the community where we're going with this. I've lived here for over 30 years, and over those 30 years, the proliferation of these signs has slowly increased to the point where we really do have a problem, and the folks that are putting up are going to have to understand they're coming down. And so I'd like to have that discussion, at least from my standpoint they are. They absolutely not only destroy the beauty of our community in many different ways, but it's people utilizing signs in an illegal, inappropriate way, and we need to deal with that. So, Mr. City Attorney, if we could add that to the agenda, that'd be helpful.
I'll be glad to do that. Also, I'll be glad to send all of you next week a memo that will outline what steps we have already taken,
yes, sir,
are taken, and plan to take dealing with the snipe signs.
There are a lot of signs. I mean, all these flag signs that have gone up everywhere in front of businesses. I mean, none of those are legal. We have a signed ordinance that allows for a certain number of square footage in front of a building, and that's it. And that's what we should stick with, at least in my opinion. So I'd like to have a robust discussion with my colleagues to talk more about that.
One thing, that should include banners and flags, the flags that are on the street.
Right.
Thank you. Just
right.
Add that.
The February 11th meeting is at the same time as what's referred to as the fast fly-in by the Florida League of Cities to Washington, D.C., of which both Commissioner Maddox and I will be attending, which means that this commission will be down to 3 commissioners, the mayor and 2 commissioners. And I'm not sure what information and what votes and what other items will come before this commission, but I would ask that we at least consider maybe look at an alternative date. I know that's pretty close, and I know this came upon us quickly, and I apologize for that, but we will both be absent, and I'd like us to at least consider that. At our meeting in December, we had a vote on the sale of the property at 600 North Monroe Street, of which we declined the offer, and we, as I recall, talked about sending it to long-range planning to talk about Adams Street, if I'm not mistaken. Commissioner Maddox, I'm glad you're back because this involves you. I received a phone call and actually sat down and met with the prospective buyer, original buyer of the property, and they showed me their project. It is a wonderful project, and I really hadn't seen the things that they had planned. But I know that a lot of what we're talking about has to do with the full road system and an overall holistic approach to what we're going to do between the governor's mansion and downtown. Having said that, I know part of this involves the Department of State and their work on the Grove building and the governor and the governor's mansion. Rob Bendis, who is the contact I know with the Department of State, if we could, either staff or maybe one of the commissioners that's involved with long range, reach out and try to see if there's an interest on the part of the governor or the Department of State to engage us on this, because if there's not, then I think we probably ought to come back and reconsider that sale, because if they're not interested in perhaps doing something with this, then some of these other options, parking or whatever we talked about, probably aren't going to come to fruition. So if we could expedite that conversation, it would be helpful. And then so perhaps in February we could have a discussion about what do we end up doing, whether we look at the long range and the more holistic approach or we decide to go ahead and sell that property. So if we could do that, I don't know how you guys want to do that. I have a request, and it comes from, because I actually did some follow-up Dustin, you're here. You and I had a conversation about art in public places, and I commented that it had come before quality of life target issue, and it seemed to like kind of not go anywhere. We went back and looked at an agenda item in April, and staff, and you can, I think my aide will provide this, you owe us quality of life. And I'm going to quote here.
Look at that look.
A agenda item to this city commission regarding the placement of art and roundabouts throughout the city in the very near future, and that was dated April 30th. So could we get that? I think that'd be great.
I'm sorry, who's that request being made to?
This was in our target issue, and Gabe Menendez promised that we would have before this commission a placement, an agenda item regarding art in public places in our roundabouts throughout the city in the near future, and that was 9 months ago. So can we get that? That'd be helpful, because I think that's one of the things, Dustin, you and I talked about. Okay. And I think that's it for me. Lots of stuff.
Was this just in roundabouts, or was it art in public places in general?
Well, this specifically had to do with roundabouts.
Okay.
It was facilitated. It came up as a result of the original art that was donated to First Commerce. And we've had discussions about art in public places overall, about opportunities that exist, but we specifically wanted to get something before this commission on roundabouts.
Okay.
We keep talking about roundabouts. And we obviously put art in a public place in the roundabout at Gaines Street. We're probably going to be building other roundabouts. And the idea was, let's continue to put art in the roundabouts rather than tree plantings, or at least to have that discussion in front of this commission.
Okay.
So if we could get that for discussion, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. Other ideas for sharing? Commissioner Miller?
Well, I'm glad that Commissioner Maddox came back, because one of my sharing of ideas is the fact that we have adopted a delightful little dog from the shelter. We're all of us lucky that he's not here today, because he would be very disruptive, probably because he's very energetic. But I will be glad to distribute. It's like I've had a new grandchild. I'd be glad to distribute pictures to everyone, and it's really made a difference in our household. So yay, Animal Shelter. The staff at the Animal Shelter was so helpful in choosing this dog for us. I mean, they literally asked, what kind of dog are you looking for? And wasn't any time before here came this delightful little creature. So I'll bring him to the meeting someday, just so you all can have the pleasure of his company.
Can I grab 60 more? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, 2 things about this commission that I can't tell you how proud I am, and that was 1 week ago when the 5 of us were over at the county courthouse, the clerk of the court, when all of us were there to be there when marriage licenses were finally written for same-sex couples. I was so happy with that. And then again today when all 5 of us were at the MLK celebration, I couldn't be prouder to have all 4 of you as my colleagues, so thank you.
Thank you, Gil.
Everyone's involved.
Thank you for putting us together.
Yes. The next thing I wanted to mention was that on the 24th of this month, January, that's next Saturday, we're having the Tallahassee Food Summit. And we're real excited about this, mainly because in my office, and my aide and I have decided that we really are going to try to focus on health this year, give it some significant attention. And one of those initiatives involves getting healthy food in front of people, making it easier for people to access healthy food and to actually know what to do with it when they get it, and also to just encourage people in general. This is going to be a great day of sharing of ideas, and so if any of you can make it or drop in for part of the day, that'd be great. We've been discussing with the Tallahassee Food Network a way to assist us with implementation of our green print. I mean, we have a whole health section of the Tallahassee green print, and we've had meetings between Ms. Barber in EPR and Reese Goad in utilities, and the assistant city manager Rick Fernandez has been in attendance. Hopefully we'll have more information. The manager's aware of all this, and we'll have more information as to how they can help us to achieve the goals we've set out in the green print in order to help our community to be more healthy. And finally, my last item is that it's been so beautiful downtown during the holidays with the lights on in the parks. And I hear that this has been brought up before, and I didn't have a chance to bring it up with the manager, so in our 12 or 20 things that we had to talk about the other day. But the possibility of leaving the lights on, at least in the chain of parks, during a part of the year, all year, would be delightful. But it would be nice to have those lights, especially in these days where we have very short days. So that's an ask and for consideration, because it just is really, turns it into a magical place. It's really nice. So.
Can we bring you back just some information on how much it would cost?
If I could interject on that, great minds think alike. Mm-hmm. I requested of staff that information, and Reese Goad and Rick Fernandez have done a lot of research on it. It is nominal cost because the cost is in trading the lights out, which they currently have to do because it's growing into the trees and the lights need changing. And they're getting information on LED lights that can actually change colors. So for, we could put red, white, and blue for 4th of July. We could, change colors for different things and really make the downtown an amenity there for a nominal cost. I was really encouraged when I got the information back from Reese. And what I suggested in speaking to Mr. Fernandez this morning at the financial viability meeting is that they could get the information and agenda it for a long-range planning target issue, and then we can bring it to the full commission.
That's great. I'm so proud to hear all of you have such confidence in us, since we are referring everything to long range.
One of the things that I noticed recently, when I guess it was right after the holidays, it looked dark. And probably because of the lights that we had up everywhere, it really did look kind of dismal without the lights. So that'd be something worth looking at.
Mm-hmm. Great. Commissioner Ziffer, I'm sorry, Richardson.
We look alike.
I can see.
Similar hairstyle.
Shag, or both of you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Commissioner Miller, your comments are a perfect segue to an issue that I wanted to bring up that I think you all may have heard already, and that your adoption of a pet from the animal shelter, and that is the no-kill policy. I have had that recently brought to my attention and wanted to know if we could have, if you all haven't already, some discussion about that as a commission, and possibly give some direction to staff at the animal shelter with regards to that. I mean, I was kind of astounded to see how over the years the number of animals we've had to, puppies and kittens, that we've had to euthanize at the shelter. And there may be some options to that. But I'd like to see us at least have that discussion, so maybe we can find more loving homes like you all were able to provide, Commissioner Miller, for your puppy.
We actually have had that discussion on, I don't know how many years ago, okay, Commissioner Richardson, but if it is something that you would like to bring back, circumstances may have changed, a lot of things may have changed, but we have had that. The Commission has actually provided direction on that in the past. And I think the issue really centered around the ability. First of all, there was just a concern that we cannot manage the number of animals we would have. So, but let us just update that, because it's been a long time.
Typically, I'll talk about spay and neutering, and I know that through our budget process, we fund Be the Solution, and we've increased the number of spay and neuter when people bring their animals in. As we do that, our euthanizing numbers decline too. Okay. Because there's a definite correlation between fewer puppies and kittens being born and the number. And so one of the ways it may not necessarily get to a no-kill policy, but clearly one of the things that we've been very successful with is numbers are declining because of the things that we're doing. So this may be able to be achieved through either a presentation here or perhaps a conversation with staff and Be the Solution.
Okay.
And another aspect of that is trap and release, which trap, neuter, and release. And I really would like to have a discussion about that very seriously.
Trap, neuter, and release.
Neuter, and release. Basically, it's more of a program that neuters animals that are wild, that don't belong to people. And one of the concerns is that a lot of these animals are cats. One of the concerns that's been expressed by the Audubon Society, for example, is that we're putting these wild animals out on the street, but the fact is that what they're out there doing right now is replicating themselves by the dozens, and so I'm interested in adding that to our discussion, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. And then, Mr. Mayor, with the legislative session right around the corner, I'd like to know what our legislative agenda will be, if that's been formulated.
Yeah, I believe we're in the process of scheduling meetings now. If we haven't had one with you, with our state lobbyists to develop what are our priority action items. And as you'll know and become more familiar with, as we are the city here in the capital city, a lot of times when issues confront other cities around the state or uniformly confront cities, they'll ask expertise from this commission to come over and testify from time to time, so on and so forth. So if they have not gotten to you yet, they will.
Okay. And one thing I would point out, as you all know, I served in the legislature, and many of my former colleagues are now in leadership positions, if that helps us at all.
That's why we got you here, man.
And so I would certainly be willing to help in that respect, our lobbying team. And then lastly, just an issue that, speaking of being follically challenged, I was at the barbershop recently.
That didn't take long. That didn't take long.
He still charged me $12. But the barbers at the barbershop were telling me about the flooding that occurs right there at the intersection of Macomb and Virginia. Whenever we have heavy rains, the water comes up even to the top of the curb. And people can't access their businesses. They can't get across the street because they park across the street in the empty lot over there. And so, Madam Manager, if we could have someone look into that drainage issue at that intersection. And I think it's caused because you have the hill coming down from Macomb south of Tennessee Street, the hill coming down Virginia west from, I guess, Bruno Street, and all of that water converges right there at that intersection. And so and the guy said it's caused a problem for them for years. Why they haven't reported it, I don't know, but they
that used to be something we heard a lot about. I haven't heard that recently, but we'll certainly look into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Was this that 9-inch rain that we had?
Yeah.
That was President.
Yeah, that's all that I have.
Any other items? Okay, Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say thank you to the Commission for a great meeting and great debate and good policy outcomes. I appreciate it. I just wanted to say before the year ended, we lost Sheriff Campbell, and he was a dear friend of mine. And Larry Campbell gave over 50 years of his life to law enforcement, and years before that to the Marine Corps. And I wanted to thank the Commission and our city family for going to the funeral and being supportive of the family. We had a lot of connection there. David Farrell is a longtime TPD officer, retired as Sheriff Campbell's brother. Jack Campbell did an outstanding job at the funeral as well in eulogizing his father. And our own Tom Coe did an outstanding job, which had to be very tough because the sheriff was his best friend. So thank you to our city family and to the Campbell family. Our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Yeah, Commissioners, I sent it to you pretty late today, but we received a really nice letter from Sheriff Swearingen thanking TPD in general for assisting them and being on duty so that the sheriff's deputies could attend the funeral.
Great. Just a few items. I know the hour grows long. One, I want to thank all of you all for joining us today, joining the county rather today for the MLK annual celebration. It was great to have a strong show for us. We were 5-2 city on this one over there. Also want to acknowledge Officer Scott Angulo, Mark Lewis, and Wayne Stats for the acknowledgement that they received earlier this afternoon in this room at the hands of the Tallahassee Democrat, who acknowledged them for their work. The city has also been planning a acknowledgement for our first responders. Frankly, we were waiting for all of the respective investigations to take place, so on and so forth, so that we could be clear about how we were going to move forward. And so look out for more information to come from the manager's office with regard to an acknowledgement for TPD, Leon County Sheriffs, and FSUPD and the heroism toward the end of last year. The Department of Juvenile Justice, they did in the last 2 weeks confirm a new permanent secretary, Secretary Christy Daly, who served as deputy to Secretary Wansley Walters. And they have seen and released a report a couple of weeks ago showing remarkable results with regard to reducing the number of recidivism and even the flow of juveniles into the juvenile justice system. So Leon County, rather District 2, which encompasses a couple of counties, the shifts were not as dramatic here, and there are a number of reasons probably why that is, and some of them good reasons why. In fact, we've adopted some policies in this area that some of the other districts that saw more dramatic improvements were just adopting. So with making the case that we've seen a lot of the gains that other communities are just not realizing. She has requested to host that meeting here in City Hall. And so we're going to send a note around to all of you, inviting you to participate in that meeting. It is intended to be a planning meeting where they're bringing in a keynote speaker, Shay Bilchek with Georgetown University, who is going to present. And that meeting will be on January 29th from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. And it should be a pretty robust discussion around their dashboard and trends and what they'd like to see additional districts do. They'll be inviting judges and the state attorney's office, public defenders, and other providers in the area. Third, commissioners, you'll see some new faces up throughout our halls. The fellowship program that we launched last year, the 3 fellows that were selected, all graduate level students in Public Administration and Urban Affairs, Sakina Kenton, Michael Alfano, and Chris Bratton, again, all graduate-level students. And they're going to be working on a number of projects and will also be available to assist us on request. And Commissioner Max, I think you also have a new intern who's going to be joining the commission suite. So there should be...
There right now.
Oh, it's already here. You want to introduce them?
Matt, if you'd stand up and wave. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good job, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Good job. So we'll see those faces in and about the city commission area. Anything else for the good of the order? Madam Manager, appointed, Treasurer Clerk?
Mayor and Commissioners, I think it would also be appropriate to remember at this time we also over the holidays had the passing of former Mayor Commissioner Betty Harley.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was I thought, a very nice article in the paper with some very good comments from some of you, but I thought it would be appropriate that we mention that as well and pass along our condolences to that family as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amen. Thank you for that reminder. If there's no further business, we stand adjourned, Commissioners.
Welcome to this edition of Source One. I'm Tanya Heron with the City of Tallahassee, keeping you informed with the activities in your community. Don't turn that dial. You're tuned in to Source One.